I know so many people who just fall out with everyone. They fall out with friends, they fall out with family members, they fall out with people they date, and it's always the other person's fault. Baby, you're the common denominator here. What are you doing? Girl, I ain't gonna lie, this is like my third time trying to film this video. But anyway, hey girl, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Trinity. If you're new here, today we're gonna be doing a continuation of my last video. This is part 2 of realizations that changed my life. If y'all can hear a lawnmower or leaf blower, whatever that is outside, please ignore it. Hopefully they're done, but that's why I had to restart this video so many times, because every time I thought they were done, they came back and started again. And at this point, I'm over it. I just want to get the video out. So no long intro, just because this is part 2. I already explained what this video is about in the last video. If you have not seen part 1, make sure you go back and watch that after you watch this one. So without further ado, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Number 1, alone time is necessary. I always talk about that period I went through a few years ago, right after a breakup, where I decided that I really wanted to become comfortable with me, and I wanted to become comfortable being by myself. At that point, I had been in relationships for like 8 to 9 years straight, and I had no idea how to be single. Like, whenever I was single, whenever I would go on a break with whoever I was with, I would be like in shambles, okay? Because I was not comfortable being alone. I didn't know who I was. My confidence was so low. My self-esteem was kind of low. I really only found value in being someone's girlfriend and being an entrepreneur. I didn't really love myself for who I was. So I committed to figuring out who I was and falling in love with myself. And I was tired of it. Like, I was tired of only being happy when I was in a relationship or when I was dating someone, talking to someone. So when I made that decision to really commit to those things, I went the first maybe 3 months without talking to anyone. I didn't go on any dates. I wasn't like texting anyone. I wasn't on the phone with anyone at night. You know, all that stuff that the girls love to do when they're single. I didn't do any of that, because I didn't want to cover up my feelings that I was experiencing from that breakup by just talking to someone else. I was so used to jumping straight into a new situation whenever I would go through a breakup or whenever I would stop talking to someone, because there were always guys around who were, I'm not gonna lie, waiting for me to be single, I guess, because as soon as they realized, they would just like jump at the opportunity. If they were good guys, if I was interested, I would just talk to them. I didn't feel the need to go through a period where I wasn't dealing with anyone. But when I tell y'all, that was one of the best decisions I ever made. That was such a crucial time in my growth journey and like my personal development journey, my self-development journey. I learned so much about myself when I went through that period of not dating. Even though it was just 3 months, I carried a lot of those things with me through the next few months of me being single after that. And not only did I learn a lot about myself during that time, I learned a lot about myself when I moved out on my own, like with no boyfriend, no roommate, just me living by myself. That's when I really started to enjoy my own company. I was taking myself out on dates, which I thought was really awkward before that. I was going to the movies by myself. I was going out to eat by myself, and I wasn't just sitting at the bar. Like, sometimes I would get an actual table or an actual booth for just me. I always encourage people to really get to know themselves and spend time alone. Even if you're in a relationship, it's not too late for you to get to know yourself and get comfortable being by yourself. Because although you may be someone's girlfriend or someone's wife, someone's mom, whatever, you are still an individual. Figure out what makes you happy outside of all the connections that you have. I was journaling during this time. I was basically giving myself all the things I wanted someone else to give me. All the things I looked for in a man, in a relationship, in my dating experiences, I was giving to myself. Telling myself I was beautiful all the time. Words of affirmation were really important to me, especially because I was trying to build my confidence. Buying myself gifts, treating myself. This is actually the time where I really became obsessed with like self-care and body care and fragrances, all that good stuff. I was not too deep into all those things when I was in a relationship before this time, because I was so busy trying to pour into someone else. I wasn't even thinking about all the ways I needed to pour into myself. I actually just posted something about this on my community tab here on YouTube earlier today. It says, I think every woman needs to experience being completely alone. I mean, not a soul texting or calling her, paying her own bills, pampering herself, solo dinner dates, gym, lots of prayer and meditation. This helps build strength. The reason why this is important is because if she doesn't know how to be alone, then she ends up tolerating things she doesn't deserve because she fears being alone. A woman who can be alone is a dangerous breed, and because she knows how to be alone, nonsense is not tolerated. And period. Okay, when I spent that time alone and I started pouring into myself and really loving myself and valuing myself, I started being very intentional about who I was dating after that, because there was no way I was going to deal with people who gave me less than I was giving myself. And I also was not desperate to be with anyone at that point, because I was cool being alone. I knew that if and when I got into another relationship after that, that person had to be adding to my life. Like, you either got to keep me on the same level or add to. I was dealing with a lot of people who were lowering my vibrations, okay? And that's because I didn't value myself. I didn't even know what to expect out of a partner because I didn't love myself. You show yourself the true definition of love first. A lot of people tolerate things that they don't deserve because they have not established any self-worth. And that alone time is the time where you really discover your self-worth. Number 2, you cannot take advice from everyone. A few years ago, I learned that you really have to be careful who you ask for advice. Whether it's relationship advice, friendship advice, financial advice, business advice, whatever, you can't ask everyone for their help. And before you go to someone asking them for their advice or their help, think about where they are in life. Stay with me, because I know exactly what y'all thinking. Y'all know how like sometimes people say, you don't need to be asking single people for relationship advice. I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I understand it, but I don't know if I 100% agree with that statement, because people can give you advice based off of their experiences. Just because someone is not in a relationship at this present moment doesn't mean that they can't give you valuable advice from their past experiences. But you really have to think about the mindset of the person you're about to ask for advice. You have to think about the space they're in, like the mental space they're in. Because some people, if they are hurt from a situation, if they're still hurt from that, they'll give you advice based off of that hurt. Like, their advice will come from that hurt. And you don't want that. You want people who can give you sound advice. So I like to use this example whenever I'm explaining this to people. Years ago, like my earlier 20s, like late teens, when I was in a very toxic relationship, me and my boyfriend at the time were always going back and forth. Like, we would always break up because he was always cheating on me. We would break up for like 2 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, like whatever. And I would always ask my friends, like, should I take him back? And now looking back on it, I realized that I was asking people who I knew would tell me, yeah, you should just give him another chance. He deserves some grace. Maybe he changed, because they did the same thing with their boyfriends and the people they dated. I was asking my friends who constantly gave men chances. I was asking my friends who didn't think it was the end of the world when their boyfriend cheated on them. They didn't think that was a deal breaker. I was asking people who did not have the best self-worth at the time. So they were giving me advice based off of where they were. They weren't giving me advice that would really benefit me. And I found myself in the same cycles over and over again, because I was always going to people who I knew would tell me what I wanted to hear. If you're in a relationship and you go to your parents for advice, this is why I say sometimes it doesn't really matter whether or not someone's in a relationship giving you relationship advice, or if they're married giving you relationship advice, because you could be asking someone who's in a marriage that looks nothing like what you want for advice, and that makes no sense whatsoever. Sorry to step on toes, but some of y'all parents might be married, but they might not even have the type of relationship that you want. Like, if you're trying to save money, it probably wouldn't be wise to take financial advice from your friend who's always buying whatever, whenever. She don't care what bills need to be paid. She's gonna treat herself to something nice. Probably wouldn't be the best idea to ask her, should you buy this bag, although you're trying to save money. She's probably gonna tell you yeah. Now, that's not to say that your friend who is a big impulse spender and isn't really that responsible with her money, that's not to say that she can't tell you to do better than her, because she very much could. But you probably should not be going to her as your first option for advice. If you're going through something with your friend and you're trying to figure out whether or not you should rekindle that friendship, or, you know, apologize to her, or have a conversation with her, or whatever, you probably should not ask your other homegirl who's always cutting people off every 5 seconds what you should do in that situation, because she's probably going to tell you to do the same thing that she does, and every situation does not call for that. So just be mindful of who you are asking for advice. Number 3, you are the problem sometimes, sweetie. You're not always the victim. It's not always everyone else's fault. Sometimes you are the problem. You may be the one contributing to your suffering. You may be the reason why you keep going through the same things over and over again with men. You may be the reason why your business is not going anywhere. You may be the reason why your YouTube channel isn't growing. You might be the reason. A lot of people don't want to accept that. Everyone likes to point the finger at everyone else and say, oh, this person treated me like this, that's why I act like this. this person did this to me, that's why I act like this, that's why I do this. No, you do things because that's what you want to do. You make your own decisions. No one forces you to do anything. And believe it or not, you are the reason why you are where you are right now in life. It's nobody else's fault but yours. I mean, people may have contributed to it, but you played the biggest factor, because no matter what people do to you, you always have the option to become better and get yourself out of that situation. Period. But a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people don't want to do the work to become better. A lot of people don't want to do the work to improve their situation because they're so hyper focused on it being someone else's fault. You may not ever get the apology you want. You may not ever get the closure you want, but what are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit in that same spot for the rest of your life while that person you're waiting to apologize is moving on with their life? That's not going to get you anywhere. I know so many people who just fall out with everyone. They fall out with friends, they fall out with family members, they fall out with people they date, and it's always the other person's fault. Baby, you're the common denominator here. What are you doing? Now, if you are that person who's always falling out with people, if you fall out with all your friends, you always beefing with everybody got a problem with you, I'm not trying to say that the beefs are always your fault, but what I am saying is there's something about you that's attracting this type of friend. There's something about you that's attracting this type of partner, and you got to figure out what it is. Is your self-esteem low? Is your confidence low? Are you codependent? Like all those things I talked about earlier in the video, all those things I was dealing with before I started spending time alone. You may have those same issues. And I'm telling you, when you have all those issues, it will affect all of your relationships, all of your friendships. Your life will improve when you really take inventory and figure out what about you needs to change, because it's not always everyone else. And while it may be everyone else, it's also you. You play a part in it too. You gotta start being self-aware. You have to start taking accountability for your actions and the role that you play in things. You gotta start taking accountability for why you are where you are right now in life. What can you fix within yourself that will improve your relationships, your romantic relationships, your platonic relationships? What can you do? There's always something that you can do to change your situation, because sitting still, doing nothing, waiting for someone to apologize to you, waiting for someone to save you is not going to get you anywhere, because there's no guarantee that anyone will ever do any of those things. Number 4, you are not for everyone, and you shouldn't even want to be for everyone, but we'll get to that. I spent so many years of my life wanting to be everyone's cup of tea, especially in dating. Like, I found myself wanting to be a little more of this and a little less of that, just to fit the criteria of what someone wanted. And because I was always doing that, like shrinking myself or trying to become more of something to please someone else, I kind of had like an identity crisis at a certain point. Like, I didn't know who I was. I was not consistent with who I was. And it's cool to always be changing for the better, but when you're changing based off of what someone wants you to be, that's where the issue comes in. I eventually had to get to a point where I didn't even desire to be for everyone. I didn't want to be the girl who anyone could be with. I didn't want to be the girl who everyone wanted to be with, because that would just be proof that I didn't stand for anything, that I didn't have any standards. I was constantly adjusting myself instead of making people adjust to me, or maybe not even making people adjust to me, because you are who you are. If you don't check the boxes, I just won't deal with you. And if I don't check your boxes, you just shouldn't deal with me. One of my favorite things to watch on YouTube is Pop the Balloon. I've said this before on my channel, but I haven't talked about it in this way. But I love that show because you really see how many people really do stick by their standards and stick by what they want. If a man comes out on that show and he says, oh, I got 2 kids, and a girl in the lineup don't want to deal with a man with kids, she popping that balloon. If she's really set on the fact that she does not want to deal with a man with kids. There's no going back and forth. There's no negotiating. It's so important to have your standards and have your non-negotiables so that you don't even waste your time entertaining people who don't fit that description. I was always very easygoing because I wanted to appease everyone. I didn't want to be difficult. I didn't want to give anyone a hard time. I wanted to be everyone's cup of tea, like I said, and that did nothing for me. I started spending more time focusing on becoming someone I was proud of, someone I liked, someone I loved, as opposed to becoming what everyone else liked and loved. I don't want to be an easy catch. I want people to look at me and say, okay, she requires XYZ. I may not be able to do that, so I'm just going to leave her where she is. I want people to say that, because when you don't have standards, you're allowing way more people to come in and chip away at you. piece by piece by piece, bit by bit by bit, and next thing you know, you're depleted. You have nothing left for yourself or anyone else. This is also a great way to boost your confidence, like really just focusing on becoming someone you like, because you can't control anyone. No matter what you do to fit in other people's boxes, you can't guarantee that those people are going to respond the way you want them to. That's why you have to be more focused on making sure you're happy with yourself. You can't guarantee that anyone will be happy with you regardless of what you do, how you act, how you dress, how you look. People will always find something wrong with everything you do. Love and value yourself first. And last but not least, what's for you will always be for you. When things and people are meant for you, you don't have to compete. You don't have to do the most. You don't have to dumb yourself down. You don't have to shrink yourself. You, just being you, will be enough. Again, that goes for relationships, friendships, opportunities. You do not have to compete for what is actually yours. That doesn't mean you don't have to do work. You do have to do work, but there will be no competition. And this realization will also help you to deal with rejection. You have to remember at all times that man's rejection is God's protection. Anything you want that doesn't seem to want you, anything you want, anyone you want, any opportunity you want that does not work in your favor, that is God's way of protecting you. Clearly, that thing, that person is not meant for you, and that's okay. You cannot have a scarcity mindset. You have to have an abundance mindset where you understand that, no, this person may not want me, but there's plenty of other people in the world who will. I don't have to change. I don't have to shrink myself because there's someone out there for me who will appreciate me for who I am. That does not mean you don't need to be doing the work to become better. Yes, you always need to be trying to be your best self and grow and evolve. But at your core, you will not have to change who you are for people and things that are meant for you. All the things you want that are really meant for you already have your name on it. No one can do anything to take those things away from you. Those things are yours, and you have to operate like that. You have to operate like what you want belongs to you. And if you're walking around like this, trying to hold on to things that really aren't meant for you, you're gonna miss out on the things that actually are. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in the idea of being with someone or having a friend or being a part of some type of opportunity, having a certain job. Like, we get so wrapped up in those things that we forget that we need to be aligning our desires with what God wants for us. Every night when I say my prayers, I pray that God helps me to align my desires with His will for my life. And ever since I started praying that prayer, I've become more comfortable with letting things flow, letting things come and go. I don't want to hold on to things that are not mine. I don't want to hold on to anything that does not belong to me, anything that does not have my name on it. I don't want it. I'm willing to let stuff go when needed because, one, this thing does not belong to me. Clearly it belongs to someone else, and that person cannot get it if I'm holding it hostage. And two, I want my hands free for what God has for me. I want my hands free for what God has tailor-made, custom-made for me. You cannot get what is actually made for you when you're holding on to something that is not meant for you. The ego is what makes us feel like we gotta hold on so tight to something that clearly is not meant for us. But if that thing or that person is not serving you, and it's very clear that that's not where you're supposed to be, you gotta be willing to let that thing go so that you can receive what actually is for you. Woo, y'all don't know the struggle I had to go through to get this video out. It just took me like an hour and a half to film this, 15-minute video because of all the outside noise, and my freaking camera kept overheating. It died one time. I don't know what's going on, but somebody don't want me to get these videos out. But anyway, I'm glad we got it done. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this one and part one. Again, go watch part one if you have not already seen it, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.